There are moments in history when a single act of defiance becomes more powerful than 1,000 orders. Moments when silence speaks louder than any command. This is the story of one such moment, a story they never put in the official records, but one that every soldier who was there would remember for the rest of their lives. The year was 1952. The place, a forward operating base in the mountains, where winter came early and discipline came harder. Captain Marcus Hendricks had ruled his company for 3 years with an iron fist and a reputation that preceded him like a storm. He was a man who measured loyalty by obedience, and obedience by fear. His uniform was always immaculate, his posture always rigid, and his eyes, they were the eyes of a man who had never been told no. On the morning of November 14th, a routine battlefield inspection was scheduled following a skirmish that had left 2 soldiers wounded and 1 missing. The missing soldier was Private Chen, a 20-year-old rifleman from Sacramento who had been last seen near a collapsed trench during the firefight. Standard protocol demanded a recovery effort. Standard protocol demanded documentation. Standard protocol demanded the truth. But Captain Hendricks had other plans. Among the ranks assembled that morning stood Corporal David Marshall, a new transfer who had arrived at the base only 6 weeks prior. Marshall was unremarkable in appearance, average height, quiet demeanor, the kind of soldier who kept his head down and his rifle clean. But those who had served with him noticed something different. He had a stillness about him, the kind that comes not from fear, but from certainty. As Hendricks paced before the formation, his voice carried across the frozen ground like a whip crack. "Private Chen's status will be recorded as deserted under fire," he announced, his breath visible in the cold air. "His family will receive no honors, no benefits, no flag." The words hung in the air like poison. Hendricks continued, pulling a prepared statement from his jacket. "You will each sign this report confirming that Chen abandoned his position. This is a direct order." The soldiers stood frozen. Every man there knew the truth. Chen hadn't deserted. He'd held his position while others retreated. He'd bought them time with his life. Then, from the third rank, a voice cut through the silence. "No, sir." Every head turned. Captain Hendricks stopped mid-stride, his face darkening like a gathering storm. "What did you say, Corporal?" Marshall stepped forward from the line, his movements calm and deliberate. "I will not sign a false report, sir." The temperature seemed to drop another 10 degrees. Hendricks closed the distance between them in 3 long strides, his face inches from Marshall's. "You will sign this report or I will have you court-martialed for insubordination before sunset." Marshall's voice remained steady, almost gentle. "Private Chen died holding his position, sir. 23 witnesses saw it. I was one of them. If you court-martial me, they'll all testify, and then they'll ask why you wanted the lie." The words landed like artillery. For 5 seconds, 5 eternal seconds, no one moved, no one breathed. The entire formation watched as Captain Hendricks' face transformed from rage to something else, something closer to recognition. The recognition that he had just been defeated without a shot being fired. Marshall reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew a folded piece of paper. He held it up for everyone to see. "This is Private Chen's final radio transmission, sir, logged and time-stamped. He called in enemy positions for 6 minutes after the retreat order. The communications officer gave me a copy this morning." He let the paper flutter to the ground between them. "You can pick it up, sir, or I can deliver it to the colonel. Your choice." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Captain Hendricks stood perfectly still, his jaw working soundlessly. His hand twitched toward the paper, then stopped. His eyes swept across the assembled soldiers, seeing for the first time not subordinates, but witnesses, not followers, but judges. Slowly, carefully, he stepped back. "Formation dismissed. he said, his voice barely above a whisper. The soldiers didn't move immediately. They stood there, processing what they had just witnessed. Then one by one, they broke ranks, but not before each man met Marshall's eyes with a barely perceptible nod. Within the hour, the report was withdrawn. By the evening, a proper recovery mission was authorized. By the following morning, Captain Hendricks had requested a transfer. It was approved within 48 hours. Lieutenant Colonel Raymond, who had commanded the base, called Marshall to his office 3 days later. The old officer sat behind his desk, studying the young corporal with careful eyes. "You know what you did, son?" Raymond asked quietly. "I followed protocol, sir." "You destroyed a senior officer's career." "No, sir. He did that himself. I just refused to help him." Raymond leaned back in his chair, a thin smile crossing his weathered face. "There's a difference between following orders and following men who are worth following. Hendricks never learned that. But you already knew it, didn't you?" Marshall said nothing. "They'll remember this," Raymond continued. "Every soldier at this base will tell this story for decades. You understand that?" "I hope they remember Chen, sir, not me." The lieutenant colonel nodded slowly. "Get back to your unit, Corporal." Years later, the story spread through military channels like wildfire. It was never in the official records, never in the after-action reports, but every soldier who served in that region heard it. The story of the recruit who said no. The story of the captain who forgot that authority without integrity is just tyranny with a uniform. Private Chen's name was eventually added to the memorial wall. His family received full honors. And somewhere in the mountains, where winter comes early and discipline comes harder, soldiers still tell the story of the day a corporal taught a captain what leadership actually means. Marshall served another 20 years before retiring. When younger soldiers asked him about that day, he would always say the same thing. "Power without principle is just noise, but principle without courage is just philosophy. When you stand in that space between what's ordered and what's right, you'll know who you really are." Image 15. And that, more than any medal or commendation, is the legacy that refuses to be buried.